a political assault on independent journalism. And now they're not only going after our ability to be on platforms like YouTube, but now they're also saying you shouldn't make any money doing your work, right? That they're going after Patreon and PayPal. I'll go into that a bit because there have been attacks on certain individuals through PayPal, canceling PayPal for people uh, who are, most people don't, for example, raise a lot of money on PayPal, but now they're shutting down like Mint Press. I saw Alan McLeod, right? These journalists, they are having their ability to make any revenue completely taken away from them. And that's the point of this. So let's get into it, okay? Let's get into first the article at hand. All right. So I'm going to pull it up on the screen. While I'm doing that, keep boosting the stream, everyone. Keep liking it, keep sharing it. Make sure you're subscribing to the channel. And be sure to, of course, support my work at patreon.com/DannyDhaiphong if you are able to do so. Do not let these forces take away the ability just to make somewhat of a living. And I'll explain what I mean by that in a bit. So here it is. All right. Sneaky. That's what we are. The sneakiest defenders of Putin's invasion of Ukraine. So sneaky, as someone pointed out in the chat. I think it was Joe, the Euroswatter, who pointed it out, not in the chat, but in the community post, that we're using our names, our voices, and our platforms to be sneaky about this, right? But we're the sneaky defenders, sneakiest defenders of Putin's invasion of Ukraine. And look at that, those doctored photos. Look how evil. Look at Lee Camp. He's like the top of the pyramid here. Doused in red, Ben Norton, and then there I am. They put me all the way in the far right next to Jin Jing Lee. Samira, you got Samira Khan there, Max Blumenthal, all of us make it into this article. So first, before I get into the beginning, I'm not going to start there. I want to start with what they said about me, because I want to just address these smears and slanders. All right. So I'm just going to scroll down to where they first start talking about me. All right. So the ties that bind, says Matthew, the ties that bind. And he begins by saying that I'm a writer, a podcaster, and an advocate for authoritarian regimes in the aforementioned tradition. So essentially, he's talking about campus and all sorts of things, socialist countries, Russia, right? So I'm for all those authoritarian regimes. As a co-editor of Friends of Socialist China, his advocacy's reason d'etre seems to be defending the modern Chinese Communist Party. In the interest of full disclosure, I'll note here, I've been publicly critical of the Chinese government before. Nobody really cares, but I guess you're showing that you also, you claim that I have a political orientation to my positions. Well, he's showing quite clearly here that he's already coming at this from the position of being critical of the Chinese government. So in an email exchange, he touted China's accomplishment on multiple issues. So I said, and this is a quote of mine, quote, I spent ample time on China because the United States is the most propagandized country in the world, with majorities holding a negative view of a country that is leading the way globally on matters that literally will determine humanity's future. Of course, this article does not go into what those matters are, which I actually explain in the email. Something like poverty alleviation and climate change, they're just those issues that supposedly liberals, especially liberals in the corporate media, say they care about, but they really don't, because then they'll attack people like me who say, okay, well, hey, China's doing something about this. Maybe the US should do something about it. Oh, no, well, I'm the problem, right? I'm the one who's shilling for the Communist Party of China just because I say things like that, even though I don't think there are any lies told there. I think that that's just the truth. I think that mainstream international organizations like the World Bank and the United Nations acknowledge China's major humanity shaking and completely awe-inspiring accomplishment, like eliminating extreme poverty, that actually exists, right? So does China's investment in renewables and how much progress it's made on pollution. That actually happened. That's still happening. And even smarmy capitalists like Michael Bloomberg will acknowledge such a thing. So this is just, I mean, this is just ridiculous. So as the Coda story has noted, okay, so here we got the Coda story. What is the Coda story? So this is the sources that Matthew uses. Well, I'll show you what the Coda story is very quickly. Okay, the Coda story is, and I'm just going to pull this up from Ben Norton, who did an article on the Coda story for the Gray Zone quite some time ago. So the Coda story in this article, brought to you by the EU and the U.S. government. U.S. government Coda story smears American journalists who undermine new Cold War propaganda. All right. So there's the article from Ben Norton. And let me just make it a little smaller here. So Ben Norton says, okay, I need to really adjust my screen a bit because it's a little too big still. Okay. It's a little too far to the right. Sometimes I hate Chrome. It's super annoying. All right, here we go. Finally. Okay, so the Coda story, I'm just going to go to the part where he talks about funding, right? So talks about the NED. So the Coda network, which is the what owns the Coda story, it presides over it, reaped $180,130 of a grant from the National Endowment for Democracy. All right. So in the NED's blog Democracy Digest, it was celebrated for winning the European Press Prize for its anti-China content. So here you go. The NED appears to believe it is getting its money worth because the U.S. Regime Change Organization followed up with a post on the official NED website a few days later that praised its grantee, the Coda story, for its work. And there you see that. So the Coda story is connected to the National Endowment for Democracy, which is the CIA front. And then you can go into all of these neoconservative pundits like Ann Applebaum, who's on the board of advisors of the Coda story, right? So this is really a military industrial complex, EU, NATO, media organization. All right. So that's the source that he uses against me to say that they've already noted, right, that I and many other journalists cited here are supposedly, propagandists, right? And so he says that I'm a denier of the atrocities in Xinjiang, a fact that he does not deny but justifies. In an interview conducted by Lee Camp, he heavily implied that a Uyghur woman, Tuserne Ziawudin, who has spoken publicly about her sexual assault in Xinjiang concentration camp, is not to be believed. This despite the fact that other women have corroborated her story, suggesting a deep and horrifying rape culture exists there. In an email to the Daily Beast, Dhaiphong claimed that the story Ziawudin told BBC is inconsistent with her other interviews, that she was resettled by an organization that has received funding from the NED, and that claims that she has made at present should be further investigated. And look at this. Look at this. This is just, I mean, this is just bad artwork, first of all. This is like a photo illustration. It's just like copy paste over Putin's eyes or something. It doesn't make any sense. It's just complete smear propaganda. And so supposedly the BBC addressed this by saying that she lived in constant fear of being sent back to China. So that's why her stories didn't match up. But all of that is very, very, very dubious. As I said in the email to him, that Ziawudin is connected with the Uyghur Human Rights Project, NED funded, that once she was connected with them, suddenly her story began to change, that she said explicitly that she did not undergo any sexual assault or any kind of sexual attack, rape at these so-called concentration camps, at this vocational educational center, at the prison that she was in. It just didn't happen. So when there are two conflicting claims, I said you need to investigate it further, right? And he's coming out now and saying that I'm a misogynist for saying this, that if you go over this, that false rape allegations are very rare, right? So he's saying they're very rare. And there's nothing at all to say about the dubious connections, the actual context here. The fact that these propaganda stories have been used over and over and over again to smear China and to forward a new Cold War. This critical context is completely left out by uh, Matthew Forrester, right? He doesn't engage in the actual politics of the situation. The fact that this is not just some benign accusation of rape, that this is a political operation meant to smear, degrade, and make China out to be some kind of prison camp, one big prison camp for Uyghurs, when over and over and over again, we've seen that all of the sources of this information, including Zia Wooden, are from Radio Free Asia, National Endowment for Democracy funded organizations like the Uyghur Human Rights Project. I mean, how many times do we have to go over this? But of course, with people like this, it's not about the truth or what's correct or what we should look into further. It's all about propaganda and making it out to seem that we are misogynists and apologizing for this kind of behavior. No, there is none of that happening. That is just a complete smear, right? And this is just look at this. It's rather stunning to see the supposed man of the left blithely dismiss a marginalized woman in this way. Frankly, it was misogynistic in the extreme. What kind of journalist who says they're objective and says they're not writing politically even puts this in their article? Who does that? Who I don't even do that. I don't even go into my articles when I'm analyzing and being analytical and challenging imperialism and say, individual, this is misogynistic and sexist and racist. I mean, this is just amateurish name calling. It has no context. It's all about making us out to seem like we have no credibility, that we're just doing the work of the Russian and Chinese governments, and that we're willing to stoop to very low lengths to do that. And it's just absolutely pathetic. It's absolutely pathetic. It has no basis to, I feel bad even reading this. so, so here's the fun thing. This is really fun. So misogynism, misogyny, all those smears. Look, those are just attacks. There's just absolutely no basis to it. Just saying we need to investigate this matter further is true for any accusation. Obviously, Matthew has never heard of the fact that while rape is a serious problem that happens mostly to women, we also have a long history in the United States of Black men being accused of rape falsely and then being sent to prison for their entire lives, or during Jim Crow, being lynched. Right? He's obviously never heard of the fact that you actually do need to do some kind of investigation into accusations made against people in order to get things right. That actually does need to happen. This whole quote unquote believe women no matter what without any context. Of course, you should have an inkling of, okay, I believe that this is a huge problem and that we should take it seriously, but nothing that I say in terms of we should be uh, we should be investigating this matter further goes against that, right? So it's just a smear, it's just a slander, and so there you have it. So I run in circles frequently that see the same characters uplifting each other on their platforms. Norton was interviewed by Friends of Socialist China's Dhaiphong and Carlos Martinez on March 10th. In January 2021, the Gray Zone advertised Dhaiphong as appearing on a live stream with Blumenthal and Norton acting as the two hosts. Dhaiphong admits he considers Blumenthal and Norton to be friends who he respects, and he has been recently apoplectic over Ritter's Twitter ban, so Scott Ritter. In October 2021, Friends of Socialist China hosted a webinar featuring Norton Dhaiphong, CGTN host, and social media personality Jin Jing. So nothing controversial there. I have no idea why you'd waste words on this. It's just work that we've been doing together, people that I do engage with. I don't see what the problem with that is. It's almost like criminalizing engagement in independent journalism. It's almost like that's going on here. So Jin Jing, so Jing Jing Li is actually the proper way, but Jin Jing was recently identified by the Associated Press as an influencer who pushes propaganda and whose accounts are often inconsistently labeled as Chinese state media. So a note about that, I definitely want to have Jing Jing Li on the program because she has been smeared by the New York Times and the Associated Press. And in the Associated Press smear, which happened early last month, she, I don't know, late last month in March, an former FBI agent was the source of the the source for of the article, and literally that FBI agent call says that China has mastered the Chinese lady influencer model for spreading propaganda in this completely, we want to talk about misogyny. Matthew Forster is literally citing an article that peddles Chinese lady influencer model from the FBI as being somehow legitimate, right? That this is how deep this goes. This is how deep that these forces are within the deep state and the intelligence apparatus. They don't care that their sources that they're just regurgitating are actually just peddling intelligence, US intelligence propaganda, State Department propaganda, and using sexism and racism, Chinese lady influencer model. I mean, give me a break to essentially attack people like Jing Jing Li. And so anyway, so they talk about Li Jingjing with her 21,000 YouTube subscribers are posting videos that echo Russian propaganda, blah blah blah. So that's a lot. So a lot of this is just continuously attacking Ben Norton, Li Jingjing, myself as hanging out and doing streams and talking to each other about things like Ukraine, right? And this is what's funny. I love this. So what Li Jingjing, because I don't know why they're just putting Li. I mean, it's just so insensitive. Li doesn't mention in either her interview with Ben Norton or Danny Haiphong is that they're all listed in as co-signatories of an ideological statement deriding the propaganda war against China. The document laments unsubstantiated accusations of genocide and forced labor in Xinjiang echo endlessly in Western media and governments, along with conspiracy theories about the origins of the pandemic. So, first of all, Li Jingjing signed the statement. It's a public statement. It's something that we at Friends of Socialist China created before an event we did on this very issue, which she spoke at. So there's absolutely no secret here at all. So this is the sneakiness, right? The sneakiness is that we're being secretive, but nothing that we're doing is actually sneaky because it's all public and you can find it. And Matthew, did not such a great job at finding things because he even had to send me an email being like, you never tell your followers that you are part of Friends of Socialist China. And it's like, dude, it's literally in my Twitter bio. So anyway, so it goes over how, okay, China is guilty of genocide, all this nonsense. And of course, if we open these, I'm sure we would find, oh, well, that link doesn't work. I'm sure we would find all these links actually don't work. So I'm not even going to waste my time. But nonetheless, you would probably find Adrian Zenz or some other NED backed source peddling the genocide propaganda that we've gone over on this channel over and over and over again, right? How many times do we have to go over this? So the link between, anyway, um, Jing Jing Li answered back, saying the link between soft Russian apologism and Uyghur genocide denial stems from the problem identified earlier, an inability. Oh, so Li is actually, this is Promise Li from Laosan. I don't even want to read this nonsense. So Laosan Collective, right? It's this collective of people who claim that they're for some kind of like liberation against all empires, but they mainly target China, and they came up during the Hong Kong protests, right, to smear leftists who challenged the fact that a lot of the Hong Kong protests, the vast majority of the protesters were in organizations or being led by organizations that were backed and funded by the National Endowment for Democracy, by the imperialist countries, that it was a real proxy war in China, an attempt to create some kind of color revolution scenario there. And they have over and over and over again, right, from this article where Promise Lee, the leader of Lausan, is like the main source of like a friendly leftist for Mr. Forrester. The same happened in The Nation with David Clion, as I've covered in this channel. David Clion had many quotes from Promise Lee talking about tankies, and we're tankies, and journalists who challenge the anti-China narrative are tankies, and all this nonsense. So this is how all of this propaganda is just recycled. It's just the same thing over and over and over again. And so Forrester continues saying, considering the fact that Lee, Norton, and Dhaiphong appear to have been 3 of the original 30 signatories of the Friends of Socialist China statement, one can imagine it is something they did not forget. It should be remembered that even on her personal channel, she puts herself forward as a journalist. This is Jin Jing. And her vlogs have the air of journalistic programming. I mean, really? This is like, it just feels like racist. It just feels like they're saying that Jing Jing Lee is just kind of a robot, that she's doesn't have any independence at all, that she's just a robot of the Chinese government. Totally lacking in transparency. The fact that Li Jingjing does not even mention the statement during relevant interviews, in my opinion, be construed as journalistically unethical. It cannot, in my opinion, be construed as journalistically ethical. First of all, she literally spoke at the event. She spoke at the event as a journalist from China. There's absolutely nothing here. It's just one big nothing burger, attempts to defame us. And then I said I defended myself from criticism that this is a deceptive or unethical by indicating on his Twitter bio that he reveals his involvement with Friends of Socialist China. It's not just I reveal, I'm co-editor. I'm co-editor of Friends of Socialist China. Carlos and I created the damn thing. It's a lot of Carlos's labor, to be honest, but I help out in different kinds of ways, articles, spreading the word, all of that. I co-edit the thing, right? I help organize the events when we do events. There's absolutely nothing here. We do this work completely voluntarily. We don't make any money from it. It's just something we do because we care about it, because we believe that socialism in China is an important thing to learn about. We believe that people on the left in the United States need to know more about it. We believe that there needs to be a more robust conversation and dialogue about this. And we believe that there's something we can learn from China. Ooh, what a novel concept. What a terrible concept. There's absolutely nothing here. Dhaiphong hasn't limited himself to just denying repression in Xinjiang. He's also put forward similar propaganda that lines up with Russian justifications for the invasion, including the misinformation about biolabs. First of all, with the biolabs issue, all I said was we should be very critical and scrutinize the fact that Victoria Nuland literally seemed to be shaking in her clothing, right? Her knees seemed to be shaking when she was questioned in front of the Senate Foreign Intelligence Committee that these biolabs could end up in the hands of Russian forces, and that we should be very concerned. Those were her very words. Why should we be concerned? She didn't really answer that question, but that seems to me to indicate that there may be some nefarious activity. Never have I said that there was nefarious activity. Again, this is just all ways to make us seem like we are trying to put forth some kind of evil propaganda agenda, when really all we're doing is questioning the narratives. So, like Camp, they say, he has found himself monetarily rewarded for his efforts on Patreon. And then, of course, so this is what's really funny. Matthew tried to say that, ooh, you have over 400 subscribers. So if you average $10 per month for each subscriber, that means you're making $40,000 per month, right? And I was like, dude, completely and utterly false. You have no idea how Patreon works, right? And he is here. I'm going to show you his tweets, because I couldn't help but tweet on his thread of this article. I had to just say something. He tries to claim that I'm first world privileged, right? This guy who's publishing for the Daily Beast as a quote unquote freelancer is saying that I'm the one who's first world privileged because I make money on Patreon. And I told him straight up, and this is not untrue. I said, after taxes, I make well below the income required to meet the cost of living in NYC. This is how Patreon works. People support people on Patreon with what they can for as long as they can. And most of the times they can't do it forever, because guess what? Most people who subscribe to people like me, they are working class people. They are trying to just make it, and they just feel compelled for political and moral and all sorts of other reasons to support people like me. And so they do for as long as they can. And usually I don't know about other people, but I know for me, the average donation after all is said and done is something like $5. There's a lot of $1. There's some people who do more. It's always a variation. But after taxes, because Matthew obviously didn't do his homework, Patreon is considered self-employment and it doesn't get taxed directly. So you got to pay taxes on Patreon later. So you end up actually making a lot less than maybe what the subscriber count would seem to suggest. But of course, it doesn't matter, right? All of that, those are just facts. Who needs those when you're writing smear pieces, spreading Cold War propaganda, trying to claim that Patreon is making independent journalists rich? So, I mean, with that said, guys, this just shows that there is a huge attack on people like me and the people cited in this article, and you should be supporting it. So please do support my work. I'm just going to put that out there, because there is a huge problem here, and I'm going to show you why in a second. So still, he has more than 450 subscribers, they said, and that can't hurt. And he's excited that it's growing and it's vital to his operations, tweeting, "Many thanks to the new subscribers. I reached 410, my goal for the month." So this was some months ago, obviously, last month or something. So anyway, I'm building toward the capacity to support myself and plan trips to China and elsewhere in the socialist world to conduct on-the-ground analysis. You can support me here. Okay. I mean, is that wrong? Is that so bad to raise money so you can do journalistic activities? But according to the Daily Beast and Matthew Forrester, I'm making it big on Patreon. So here's where the problem really resides in this article, because I'm not going to get into the individual smears, okay? Because the individual smears are they're things that those folks can answer. I might go over a little bit of the beginning with Lee Camp. There's some because Lee Camp is honestly, this article, it starts with Lee Camp because I think they see Lee Camp as this example, right, of someone who actually was employed by RT America, and so they see that as a huge opportunity to show that, look, there's actually propagandists here. And so they go after him pretty harshly in the beginning. So maybe I'll go over that. But the others, Ben Nor and Jin Jing Lee, I'm hoping to have conversations with them in the future about what the Daily Beast said, because I don't want to spend this whole thing. I want to talk about, what the Daily Beast really is and be able to conclude this. So when confronted with videos from Dhaiphong and Camp's YouTube channel, YouTube said they do not violate their policies. So what do you think this means, right? What do you think this means when someone like Matthew Forrester, when the Daily Beast says they're confronting YouTube? It means they're literally going to YouTube and reporting us. They must be reporting our videos. They have connections inside of YouTube, and they're saying, hey, don't these videos violate your policy? Why don't you take them down? That's the suggestion here. So this means that the Daily Beast is attacking us, is trying to get us taken down. So YouTube had to say, we have established policies that prohibit inciting violence, promoting hatred, including towards the Uyghur people. Additionally, we've shared that our teams are working to remove violative content related to the war in Ukraine, and we removed more than 1,200 channels and 30,000 videos for violating our policies. So here you have the Daily Beast, you have Matthew Forrester actually doing something useful, getting us real data about how YouTube is very proud to take down our channels when they feel like they can, and they feel like our content supposedly violates their standards. And so this is just championing censorship, and this is what I saw was the main problem here. The smears and all that propaganda, that was coming, right? That's going to happen. That's going to continue to happen. But it's this effort, it's this campaign to take us down, which is really the problem here. Because, I mean, look, it's right here. It's right in the article. He's saying that he went to YouTube or the Daily Beast, the editors, whoever did, it doesn't say specifically, went to YouTube and said, hey, these videos violate your policies. So like snitching, like journalism as snitching. And then Meta, Facebook, claimed it's taking active measures against disinformation. We already know all about that. We know about how deep Facebook is in the censorship game. I mean, Facebook is virtually worthless for anyone who does work like myself, and for so many others. And so here's Facebook saying that they have 80 independent, quote unquote, partners who fact check claims across the globe and all this nonsense. And then Twitter as well, right? And so Twitter tells them that they've been increasing their labeling of accounts of Chinese, Belarusian, Russian state-funded media, deleted bad actors, curated quote-unquote reliable information in Twitter moments, and monitors dishonest narratives, among other actions. This includes, of course, not mentioned here, partnering with the Australia Strategic Policy Institute, which is funded by the State Department, the Australian Department of Defense, funded by military contractors, Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, in order to censor people on Twitter. Doesn't mention that. So Patreon said, when it comes to misinformation, we're mindful we're balancing two responsibilities, protecting expression and livelihoods of those using the platform and keeping the platform safe for all who use it. So Patreon took like this neutral stance, but we know that, all these platforms are subject. When you see them literally going after us, going to these platforms and saying, why aren't you censoring them? That's creating a literal pressure campaign to do so. A literal pressure campaign to get us off social media, to get us off YouTube. I mean, that's essentially what this is. So I'm going to now go, I don't want to read the rest. It's not that much longer. Let me just go up. I just want to read a little bit of what they said about Lee Camp, and then I want to get into some of the smears that they've been engaging with otherwise. Okay. So in the beginning, this article says misinformation is a profitable racket. Just ask Lee Camp. So this is literally going after Lee Camp. It's disgusting. And Lee Camp is a very busy man right now, but we're definitely going to have him on this as well. Okay. On this program as well at some point to address this censorship, because he's been absolutely just throttled, and it's just disgusting. Because I've met Lee Camp. I respect him. He's worked. I mean, the guy has just worked super hard. I mean, he's a comedian. He's, doing this program, right? I've heard him talk about all the work that went into Redacted Tonight. I mean, this dude was working hard, and you have these cowardly water boys and girls and whoever for the military industrial complex going after people like this. It just makes me sick. So in March, the former TV host found himself out of a job when RT America shut down. So making light of the censorship, an awesome thing to do as a journalist, right? So since RT's closure, he has continuously directed his followers to give him money, to give to him on the fundraising platform Patreon. There he has more than 1,900 donors giving in tiers of $5, $10, $25, and $90. Assuming he has supporters. So again, they're going after the amount, right? He must be making six figures per year, and this would net him thousands of dollars per month. Guy's trying to make a living. I think he has a child, he has a family. He lost his job. I know he lives in Washington, D.C. I'm out here in New York. I know what it's like to be living in a very expensive city. He's trying to this was what he did. This was his craft. He had a job at Redacted Tonight, and the censors, the repressive apparatus, the state got rid of it. What do you expect him to do? It's just disgusting. It's just disgusting that they want to starve us. They don't want to just smear us, but they want to starve us. They want us to literally be like I mean, they wanna. We are this, right? Because I don't. We are. I consider myself to be a person who's in the condition of the broader working majority, working class, but they want us to starve. They don't just want us to be some kind of, you know, surviving class, right? Like we're just surviving out here. They want us to starve. They want us to have absolutely no revenue stream because we're misinformation to them. Get rid of us. That's what they want. That's how insidious this is. This is how just I mean, this is political. This is a political operation. So, a strong reward for self-styled leftist anti-war anti-imperialist who is seen fit to deny repression atrocity. So it just goes on and on and on, right? So it talks about how popular Lee Camp is. Well, Lee Camp's only been holding a major television program on RT for years, right? So he's 150,000 on Twitter. He's also a comedian. So, you get to know people as a comedian. He's been doing activism for years. So, even for someone like myself, right? I've only been active on Twitter. It says 2014 on my profile, but I've only been active since 2019. I've only been really doing social media hard outside of Facebook since that time. And because there is a thirst for this, I've been able to gain thousands upon thousands upon thousands of Twitter followers just because I talk about my politics, promote my work. There's nothing insidious about that. And the same goes for Lee Camp. He's been doing the same thing for a lot longer. And so it just, right. And we don't have to go into all of these smears. I think you get the picture here. He talks about, of course, tankies, right? The Lao Song Collective loves to talk about us as being tankies. And he says, my observation indicate that many subscribe to an ideology known as campism. Same thing. David Clion. This is almost like a script. David Clion said this in The Nation, that there's a campist mentality, that where the world is divided into competing factions. Their well-justified criticism of the U.S. leads them to reflexively defend Beijing or Moscow, the other camps. There is also the extremely strident belief in multipolarity, with their often cogent critiques of U.S. hegemony, leading them to see the need to help rival nations grow powerful in order to challenge and weaken it. Often this means protecting them in order to help their rise. And so Promise Lee, the Hong Kong-born leftist activist, writer, and member of the Lao Song Collective, talked about how, we can only critique U.S. and NATO, and these tankies say that there's only we shouldn't be talking about Putin or China, right? So, and then they pulled in Samira Khan. And so we can go on and on and on about this, but I'm actually going to close this up because I'm getting sick just continuing to look at this article. But there you have it. That is the that is a particular article, right? Smearing us. And the big takeaway here, it's not that they disagree with our politics and that we are considered, right, these misinformation agents. That's something I've been hearing for years. It's something I've been talking about for a long time. I wrote about this with Dave, with in regards with the Nation and David Clion, and you even had people like Dave Zirin get in on the mix. But really, I'm talking about the actual operative campaign of censorship that people like Matthew Forrester are promoting. Matthew Forrester literally went to YouTube, or his editors, or something or other, his his handlers went to YouTube, went to Twitter, went to Meta, and said, look at all these accounts. Why aren't you censoring them? They seem to violate all your quote unquote rules. That seems to be like snitching, right? That doesn't seem to be journalism to me. But nonetheless, there you have it. There you have it. We are being attacked. They're trying to take away our livelihoods, the very ability to just sustain our work so we can do this work with the ability and time. I mean, I work part-time. I can't spend full time on this still. I'm still working up to that. Many people have been doing this for full time for so long, have been smeared and have had their job. Like Lee Camp lost his job. I mean, this is just so insidious and disgusting and gross. It just shows how, I mean, corrupt isn't even the word. It's reactionary filth. It's McCarthyism. It's the new Cold War in the media sphere, in the information sphere. It is an information war. That is what's being waged against us. And the